Alrighty, this is the current world record for Castlevania Symphony of the Night pacifist speedrun. I did recently make a video kind of explaining the run in a more infotainment type way. I made like a 20-minute video explaining this, but this is going to be more of like a breakdown of the speedrun in full and just kind of my live thoughts about it. At the very start of the run, important to note that there is no name code being entered. This is because the only other name code that could be useful, hypothetically, theoretically, might be luck mode, but the main conceit of this run is that it is not possible to beat the game both pacifist and luck mode while in luck mode, specifically because the way that this run works is it's essentially a 0-kill / 0 EXP run. It just uses the moniker of pacifist for, for the sake of allowing it to fit in with other speedrun categories that are also pacifist. It's easier to say than saying like, oh, this is a no-kill run or no EXP run, essentially. Pacifist just sounds better. But yeah, this game does keep track of the in-game kill count in the pause menu. So anytime you look at your equipment, the game will keep track of it. It keeps track of your experience. So the goal of this run is to get through the entire game with 0 experience and 0 kills by the time that we get to Dracula, the final boss. And much like all games that need to finish at some point, we will be finishing by killing the final boss and getting the credits that way. So yeah, pretty straightforward here. Nothing too crazy going on. Essentially, the goal is to skip all of these enemies by just jumping over them, manipulating their attack patterns and whatnot. And here's an interesting note. This is one of the few speedrun categories that allows glitches that doesn't skip death. Skipping death here is pretty trivial in most cases. The only downside is that in this speedrun in particular, one, we don't really need any powerful items. Like our powerful starting gear doesn't really matter because we're not intending on killing bosses or killing enemies by using that stuff. So we don't really need it. And on top of that, the only way in which we could skip death is either by being in luck mode, which we can't do because we wouldn't have enough magic to complete the run. At level 1 in luck mode, you only start with 1 MP, and that's not enough to beat the game. You can't even do any of the transformations or any important spells, and you do need those in order to beat the game normally. Even with like powerful glitches, you need at least some magic. So fun fact, it's impossible to beat this game without using magic at some point. And also, the only other way would be to use a glitch known as a reverse shift line, but that would either require that we get a level up, which we can't do because we can't kill enemies, or it would also require that we use, it would either require that or us to use the heart refresh, but I actually need the heart refresh for a glitch later on, so because of that, it just makes sense to just have death take away all of our gear. And again, like I said, it's not that big of a deal. But coming up right now is actually one of the major reasons why this speedrun category can even exist in the first place, because everything is based off of that in-game kill count and that in-game experience count. You can actually take advantage of that by doing a glitch known as a revenge tech. Essentially, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm setting up the position of these bosses such that I can have multiple projectile hitboxes inside of the enemies while I'm also inside of the enemy. And if all those conditions are met, no level up is shown on the screen, no experience is gained, and inside of the game's menu, the in-game kill count, it's still at 0. So this glitch is what allows for this pacifist speedrun to actually exist. It does look a little bit silly. Obviously, it looks like we're killing the bosses, but as far as the game is concerned, no enemy has been killed, no boss has been killed, and we can open up the menu to prove it. The menu keeps track of all the kills. And actually, at the very end of the game, every speedrun of this category will end by opening the menu to equip the items that are required to like actually beat the game, to actually like defeat Dracula and whatnot. So there's always a way to confirm the kill count, even if you have to like frame advance it or whatever. Sorry about that. So there, after skipping the boss kill on Slogger and Gaibon. From here, it's mostly just like trying to avoid enemies. These flea men are of course random, so they can be quite difficult to deal with. You can use spells to kind of like move through enemies. I did it earlier with Hellfire to like position the bloody zombies. It's not the fastest thing in the world, and you only have so much magic available to you, and every time you do a Hellfire, it costs more than half of your total MP, so you can't just spam Hellfire to get past enemies. And because this is a pacifist run, we're not going to be leveling up, we're not going to be gaining any more stats, we're not going to be gaining any more experience, so we're just stuck at this being like the default state for our magic. So it's going to be a lot of damage boosting, a lot of movement. The primary movement, obviously, if for everyone that knows anything about Symphony of the Night, is called shield dashing, specifically because we're backdashing and then we're pulling up the shield to cancel the backdash. Essentially, the idea is you just kind of mash backdash and shield over and over again. It's also important that you actually press the shield button first. It's one of the reasons why I think it's really great that it's called shield dashing, because the optimal way to do it is to always press shield before pressing backdash, because if you do it the other way around, you can end up in situations where you actually like stutter with your backdash cancels, because so long as you've pressed shield first, you get to continue the slide of the backdash, where if you backdash, then press shield, and then release shield, as soon as you release shield, you stop all of your momentum. But if you do it the other way around, you're fine. You get to keep your momentum, and it makes for smoother movement. So here's yet another boss fight. This is Doppelganger, and similar to Slogger and Gaibon, we're going to be again using a revenge tech. This one, however, this is the only one that works like this. I don't know why it works like this. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. This is just one of those because SotN moments. If you stop time using the stopwatch and then ram into Doppelganger, forcibly touch your hitbox inside of Doppelganger's hitbox. Oh man, that's so tricky. I forgot that this happened in the world record run. That is so scary. Oh man. Normally you're supposed to use the stopwatch to prevent that guy from being in your way. So here I do have to like try and use a potion basically to stay alive. This is pretty much like the only major mistake, if I remember correctly, in this run. But yeah. Yeah, this whole section of the run is pretty wacky. The revenge tech versus Doppelganger, it just works. If you kill Doppelganger after slamming your hitbox inside of him while the stopwatch is active, it just doesn't count as a kill. We do have people who have looked into some of the revenge tech stuff. There are a handful of lovely people that are working on decompilation. They're working on a decomp for the game. My brain farted. I forget the exact word. And I believe they looked into revenge techs. Maybe. Again, I'm not... Funny enough, I play this game the most, probably more than any other human being on the planet, but I am not the most knowledgeable about all the technicalities. Decompile, that's the word. I figured it out. Most of the time, I know what works, and sometimes I know why. But normally, I only ever know why because someone who's smarter than me, who figured it out, told me. So, the whole reason we did that whole movement down at the lower part of the outer wall is after grabbing the Soul of Wolf, we can use the Soul of Wolf to do wolf terrain boosted jumps. Essentially, anytime you're running in the wolf form on a slope, the calculation for how high the jump should send you takes the slope into account and actually gives you like a higher boost. Here I try and finagle a dive kick off of that book. We're not going to do enough damage to actually kill the book, so dive kicking off of it is perfectly fine. It won't count as a kill, obviously, by just doing a little bit of damage. But that's what the wolf slope jump looks like. I actually got a really good one because I didn't have to like transform again and then try and like damage boost my way up here. Making it up there without extra damage boosts is very, very difficult. It's like near pixel perfect sometimes. So the wolf helps us give us access to a dive kick mid-air, because if you untransform out of the wolf transformation, you get access to a dive kick. It also gives us access to slope jumps. All of this is so we can get the fairy card. The fairy card is one of the more useful relics in the game, because when the fairy starts talking to us, it activates the ability for us to do what's known as shop glitch. Essentially, the idea is the garnet that I went out of my way to grab, I can sell it as I'm equipping it, which causes an underflow. Essentially, the idea is that you start with 0 garnets, but the game will still allow you to sell 1. So it'll try and take 1 away from 0, causing it to turn into -1. The game doesn't allow negative numbers. So instead, it warps all the way around to 255. We sell as much garnets as we need. And in fact, we're going to be selling a lot of garnets. I think we end up selling almost 200 of them. Maybe more than 200, because we have to buy a lot of stuff. We have to buy fire boomerangs. We have to buy anti-venoms. We have to buy a bunch of flame stars. We have to buy mana prisms. We have to buy elixirs. We have to buy the duplicator, which is super duper expensive. The most expensive things are the giant stack of flame stars and the duplicator. Oh, we set up for multiple underflows here. I forgot. This is a ton. We actually end up selling probably close to 400 garnets because of that. But this is the most extensive shop trip in any category that I can think of. One of the reasons why we need this many flame stars is because we basically want the maximum amount available, as well as we're going to need enough money to buy the duplicator. And a lot of you who are already familiar with the game might be wondering, well, if you have the duplicator, why do you need to buy so many flame stars? Well, because later on, we're going to have to throw flame stars, a lot of them, and we're not going to have access to the duplicator at that time, and I'll explain when that comes up. But in the meantime, you know how I talked about shield dashing earlier? Well, this is food dashing. The idea behind food dashing is it's the same concept of canceling the backdash with an action. This time we're using the meal ticket, which spawns random food items. Here, I'm looking for a convenient time to pick up a very specific food item known as the toadstool. It is an item that, when consumed, instead of healing you, it actually poisons you. There have been a few toadstools that have dropped, but unfortunately they haven't shown up in convenient spots. If they show up at the right spot, I'll actually stop my shield dash and grab it quickly because of that. And I also want to mitigate how many items are in my inventory normally, because it can get very messy having all the food item in your inventory at once. Trying to sort through your menu afterwards to find the specific item gets a little messier when you have all that extra items, but sometimes you just have to deal with it because we didn't get particularly lucky with the meal ticket spawns. The food item that does come out is random every single time. So here, the fastest way to reset is to just reset the screen and then throw a bunch of food until you find what you need. And if you don't find it again, you reset over and over again. But eventually we find the toadstool. We're going to be taking advantage of the toadstool. Yeah, this is just showing how cluttered the menus get when you have all that stuff in there. Here, I also have to turn the fairy card off. Otherwise, the fairy would use an anti-venom to heal me, essentially, which is not great. There, I actually absorbed the toadstool and basically on the same frame canceled out of the damage that I received from the toadstool and the poison by opening the menu. Small error there. The reason I want to get poisoned is specifically because now that I'm poisoned, my defense is lowered. And because my defense is so low, I can actually take more damage. And by taking more than half of my health in a single hit, it puts me in this big toss damage boost state. This is like an intentional mechanic of the game where if you take a ton of damage, it's trying to emphasize how much damage that was by sending you flying across the room. There's another wolf slope jump that's really cool. I like that one a lot. But yeah, we poison ourselves so that way we can do the damage boost across the room. It's faster than trying to maneuver otherwise. But now we have to be a little careful in this room because we're poisoned. So we're 1 or 2 hits away from dying, depending on the hit that we get hit with. So we're going to use the stopwatch to freeze the enemies. It's one of the reasons why we use the heart refresh there. So that way we can refill our hearts. We're using the heart refresh for its intended purposes, which is very rare in Symphony of the Night speedrunning. And we're using the potions as well as another damage boost right there. That one I don't think is actually faster, but it's cool. Essentially, the potion invincibility and the damage boost is all to get through to this room, where we're going to be setting up for yet another glitch. This is the reason why we had to hold on to our heart refresh, by the way, until we had the duplicator. Now we can use the heart refresh as much as we want. And this heart refresh, I'm trying to set up a very specific pixel position, and I'm trying to use the map to confirm what it looks like when I do that correct position. And essentially, I didn't get the right position first try. And the idea is if I can scroll the screen by a certain amount, like the minimum amount, at the same time, sometimes you'll scroll the screen and it won't even actually scroll the screen, but Alucard's hitbox will be in a position that scrolls the screen. There, I got it. Where it scrolls the screen by like literally a pixel. And then if you freeze the screen and buffer a backdash out of it, you activate a glitch known as a reverse shift line. So essentially what happens is when you touch the next screen transition, it underflows the X position value that it sends you at on the other end of the screen transition, which essentially warps you past the next screen. We also have to transform into wolf form so that we have enough momentum to not get caught by essentially touching the red door on the other side. If we touch the red door on the other side, it would lock Alucard into the animation of like walking through the door, and we would still have to fight the boss anyways. And again, it's a pacifist run, so we can't fight that boss. And it ends up being that the best way to get past that boss is to use the reverse shift line. Here I'm using the wolf to try and like traverse through this section. It's a little bit faster than trying to shield dash through it because the wolf maintains momentum in the air where Alucard can't really do that. So we got the leap stone, which gives us access to a double jump and a dive kick. So now we don't have to untransform to get access to a dive kick if we really wanted it. And then we use a library card to warp back to the library. So now this is pretty much the only speedrun that I'm aware of that takes advantage of some very specific movement options to avoid fighting enemies and bosses and whatnot. And the next one coming up is called it's going to be taking advantage of a niche movement technique called a double jump reset. We're going to be seeing that once we enter the caverns. But we do have to, make our way through these enemies, trying to avoid taking damage unnecessarily, trying to avoid, obviously, killing any enemies. This is just going to be a little bit of backtracking through the marble gallery, because we have to go through the marble gallery to get to the caverns itself. This category, much like pretty much all Symphony of the Night categories, if you really think about it, is essentially a big chunk of setup at the beginning part of the run to set up for what eventually leads into getting the Soul of Bat. All of this setup, all of these relics that we're grabbing, all of the detouring, all of the items, the shop glitch, all of that is essentially just a way for us to move around the castle, grab the prerequisite things that we need to get to the Soul of Bat. Because in this game, the Soul of Bat, it's broken. It's the best relic in the game by far. It gives you access to flight. It's a transformation. It gives you access to wing smashing, which is really, really fast. It's great. It gives you access to like movement out of bounds as well. But yeah, here is the double jump reset that I was talking about, by the way. So what happens here is if you untransform against a ceiling, this is like not a glitch or anything like that. It's just a normal mechanic. If you untransform from a transformation like Wolf while you're touching a ceiling, it gives you your double jump again. It's a different version of the double jump because there's two separate versions of the double jump. There's a double jump that gives you a dive kick, and then there's a double jump that like doesn't give you a dive kick. So if you double jump after walking off of a ledge, or if you double jump after touching your head against the ceiling, that's like a special double jump. And we take advantage of reusing that double jump over and over again to clear that gap. We clear the gap because there's two items that we really want here. The Moonstone, which you just saw me pick up, as well as the Claymore. The Claymore is yet another useful movement option item, specifically because it's a thrust sword. So if you press back, then forward, and then attack, you do this thrust right here. And then you can cancel out of that thrust by transforming into the wolf. Here I almost mess up big time by falling all the way down the shaft. But we get to see the what's known as wolf rising in action here. The idea behind this technique is that you use the Claymore, which the Claymore special attack does cost magic, so you want to refill your magic every once in a while to make sure that you don't... Oh my god. I forgot about this. I can't believe this is world record. The reason this is world record will come up later, even though the execution's not amazing. There's a very important thing that happens later that really solidified this as a world record run. And honestly, I don't know if this run is even beatable, which is silly to say. But the idea is that you constantly use the thrust attack to freeze your position horizontally, and then you transform into the wolf, and then at the very end of the wolf transformation, you gain a tiny bit of height, like a few pixels of height, and then you just basically chain that back to back over and over again, and you can use that to gain height. There's a few other like glitches and momentum tricks that we're going to be using to gain height as well, that we're actually going to get to show off like almost right away. But yeah, there's actually an entire category that takes advantage of this niche movement technique, the wolf rising with the thrust sword. And you can actually beat the game with just wolf in conjunction with thrust swords because of that. It's very silly. So here we're going to be doing some more wolf rising in conjunction with the leap stone to get up to this part of the hallway. And then this is a lot of wolf rising because we need to get up onto that ledge that's above us. Another thing that's important to note is that like when your MP is too low, you can still do the claymore attack, but you also lose MP while you're in the wolf transformation. And if you run out of MP while in wolf transformation, it's over. You can't do anything. You can't transform into wolf and you can't do the thrust attack. So essentially to avoid that scenario, I'm opening the menu after doing a thrust attack to equip the mana prism to refill my MP to full and then do the thrust attack. Essentially just rinse and repeat, climbing the shaft that way. I could technically optimize my menus to menu less often and basically only ever use the mana prism when I'm at 0 MP, but this is just a much safer way to do it because if you mess up at all, you fall all the way back down and it's really bad. Now that we're on this ledge, we can actually take advantage of another niche movement technique called fire boomerang jumping. So if I throw all 6 fire boomerangs that are possible by having one in each hand, by having 2 total, in conjunction with jumping and then transforming, you actually maintain the jump speed all the way up while the fire boomerangs are on screen. The graphics get a little weird because the game is trying to transform you, but there's not enough, I guess, like sprite availability or something, some sort of visual memory. There's not enough of it. So it's waiting for the fire boomerangs to leave the screen, and then it allows you to transform. Meanwhile, you maintain that horizontal momentum the whole time. And we use that along with a little bit of wolf rising to get all the way up the shaft and then grab the gravity boots. After grabbing the gravity boots, we don't have to worry about wolf rising anymore, which is really nice. We can just use the gravity boots, which is a very large vertical jump. So anytime you have access to a dive kick, you have access to a vertical jump mid-air, which is really, really nice. So we could do grounded gravity jumps, which is by pressing down, up, and jump while on the ground. And then if I'm in the air, I do need to be in what's known as a double jump, a dive kick state. So either I have to untransform or I have to double jump beforehand, and then I can chain multiple aerial gravity jumps. We do this to get up to this location to grab a luck potion. And this is one of the reasons why luck mode also would be really nice for this run, but unfortunately it's not possible, is because luck actually matters. This is one of the few speedrun categories where you need a random drop from an enemy, and there's no way around it. There are no routing possibilities that still fit within the pacifist speedrun category like definition that would allow you to skip this item coming up, which is well, we'll talk about it when it comes up. It's coming up actually quite soon. But we did go through and do a pretty large detour, if you really think about it, for a luck potion, for the gravity boots, and for the claymore, and for the moonstone. Those were like the 4 things that like theoretically are skippable, but it doesn't make sense to skip them in a speedrun sense because they end up speeding up this next section by a lot. Theoretically, if you just get the random drop immediately, it doesn't matter. But the luck potion, along with gravity boots, the moonstone is also an item that increases your luck a little bit. So the moonstone increases your luck. The luck potion itself will increase luck by 20. The luck potion increases it by 20. The moonstone increases it by 5. So that's a 25 luck boost. I think at level 1, we start with 12 luck. So we're like tripling our total luck just from those boosts alone, which is really nice. And on top of that, the gravity boots give Alucard access to a special item called the Ring of Arcana, which if you equip the Ring of Arcana, it basically doubles your chances of any rare drop. So all of those things combined turn what would be like a less than 1% chance to drop into about a 2.5% chance to drop, which, you know, is a massive increase when you're doing runs that farm this item for potentially tens of minutes. I think the world record before I started running this category, which was the world record by Wild Mouse, I think he ended up spending like 20 minutes farming the item, which is crazy. Like, I think on average you're expected to, what's the expected value? I think at best it's like a 1 in 42. So you have to get a chance for the item to drop like over 42 times with the best possible luck. Otherwise it's like 1 out of 105. So it increases the odds a lot, essentially. Here we're doing a glitch known as Cerberus skip. This is another insane glitch. It's another reason why we needed to get the Claymore. Is because this glitch only works if you have access to a dive kick mid-air, which you only have access, if you have access to a horizontal dive kick, which is different than a vertical dive kick. You can dive kick straight down after a transformation, but you can't dive kick horizontally, like diagonally downwards. You can only do that after double jumping or after using a thrust sword. But in this state where you're under the floor, you can't actually double jump. The ceiling is blocking you essentially, so you have to use a thrust sword. So now we have access to this double jump, and what we're the dive kick. Now that we have access to a dive kick, I'm looking for a very specific pixel. This is pixel perfect positioning, essentially, where I'm trying to find the exact position that I need to dive kick, and then on the next frame, use a heart refresh. This causes a glitch known as a shift line. It's similar to a reverse shift line, but it is pixel perfect, frame perfect, and sucks. But essentially, it opens the edge of the screen by like an extra pixel, allowing me to barely squeeze through because there's out of bounds like a collision that blocks me from going to the edge of the screen and skipping Cerberus entirely. And that's all to skip the Cerberus boss fight. From my understanding, there's no way to revenge tech Cerberus. So because of that, you can't use the revenge tech glitch that we used versus like Doppelganger or versus Sagar Gaibon to skip the Cerberus kill from counting. So instead, you have to do that glitch, which is very, very painful. It's probably like the hardest glitch to learn in the entire run. Like learning that one glitch and getting it for the first time took like 3 or 4 hours or something like that. It was painful. It was very painful. But yeah, we went all the way down there to grab the demon card. The demon card is useful because it opens up this pathway. We wait for the pathway to open up and then we library card out. Theoretically, we could go farm the item right now with terrible odds. But instead of doing that, we do one last little baby tiny detour to grab that Ring of Arcana that I was talking about earlier. This is another use case where the wolf movement is technically faster because you get to move fast while in the air. That damage boost was cool. Unfortunately, the other flea man got in the way, but it's fine. Yeah, flea men, again, they're random. They're tough to deal with. So we have to go all the way to the underside of the librarian's room because there is an Easter egg in this game where if you gravity jump up the shaft that is underneath the librarian's chair, if you do that over and over and over again, he will eventually drop like secret special items. Most of these items you can grab through various means, but this is the earliest way that the speedrun would have the ability to grab this item, which is the Ring of Arcana. We should be getting it pretty soon. There it is. I think it's random each time you ram your head up there, whether or not he drops the item or not. But again, the Ring of Arcana essentially just doubles our chance of getting rare drops, which is just like so nice. Again, I think at my worst, the previous world record spent 20 minutes farming this drop. And then I have spent runs that take like 20 minutes to farm this drop. I think my best run before this, or my personal best, I think took like a few minutes, maybe like 5 or 6 minutes. So a big portion of the time save of this speedrun all comes down to this random drop. Now in like a marathon setting, if you're like showcasing this speedrun, it's probably best practice to just have a pre-made save that's like a backup save that already has the heart refresh drop. Obviously, because like There are no real ways to RNG manip item drops in this game. It is a random element that is oscillating every frame. From like the start of the speedrun. So as soon as game starts, it's out of your control. I have to go out of my way to grab the holy water there. I could have grabbed holy water in a different location, but it wouldn't give me access to stopwatches in specific spots. So it's kind of a trade-off. That detour costs about like 10, 15 seconds, where I feel like the stopwatch probably saves about 10 to 15 seconds, is more consistent. So, you know, you could choose to get the holy water in a different location. I feel like they're both close to equal. It's probably faster, like theoretically, to get the holy water in the other location and then just like get good RNG with the enemy patterns, so you don't have to worry about stopwatching them, but it's fine. So after all of this setup, we can finally attempt to get the extra heart refresh. So very similar to the idea that happened before with Slogger and Gaibon, the revenge tech. We're going to be setting up a revenge tech, but instead of on a boss, we're setting it up on the enemy that actually drops the item, the heart refresh. This is about like a 2.25, I think, percent chance, 2.5, somewhere around there, percent chance for it to drop. And every time I do this glitch, this revenge tech, if I see a level up animation, the run is basically dead. I have to reset. It's one of the reasons why I saved earlier. So I have to make sure that multiple hitboxes are hitting the enemy at the same time. And there it is. I have to be inside the enemy's hitbox. I have to have multiple hitboxes, so I use the holy water and the flame stars to do that. And then I max out my luck by wearing the moonstone, the ring of arcana, and then I use the luck potion. And in this run, I got it 4th try. That, from my understanding, I could be wrong, is the best anyone has ever gotten in a run that ended up finishing. So I think once before I got a run that got it 6th try, and I thought that was crazy. This run got it 4th try. And I saved over a minute compared to my best possible segment there, which is crazy. So the luck factor matters a lot. It's one of the reasons why this run is probably not getting beaten anytime soon. This run is also very finicky. Like, for example, that flea armor right there, you have to despawn him in this like weird janky way. Sometimes he like follows you around. It's really awkward. But the reason we grabbed the second heart refresh is for this glitch right here. This glitch is called an edge grab, I think. It's a very silly name. There's a lot of glitches in this game, like revenge tech, for example. Or another glitch coming up later called a half-blood tech. There's some silly names. But essentially, the idea behind the edge grab glitch is what we're doing here is we're desyncing Alucard's position from the center of the camera by using heart refreshes on every frame, whilst having some sort of horizontal momentum. The game will still update the momentum that Alucard has every frame without changing the camera location during these screen freezes. And the only way to do this is by having a screen freeze happen basically on every frame. And the only way to do that realistically is with an item that can be buffered that causes a screen freeze, which heart refreshes happen to be. But the only downside is you can't do it with just a singular heart refresh. You can't heart refresh and then buffer a second heart refresh on the same hand. Because in this game, there's the equipment menu allows you to have multiple multiple like healing items equipped to separate hands. So what's happening here is I'm buffering, for example, using my left hand, a heart refresh, and then I'm buffering the right hand heart refresh, and I'm swapping back and forth over and over again until I see that I'm in the correct position. And once you've desynced the camera and Alucard far enough away, it just, I don't know why, but it just zips you into the floor. And when you're zipped into the floor, the game is trying to throw you down as fast as possible as like it's out of bounds prevention. So I need to land in this very specific spot such that I can like move through the out of bounds walls and actually land right on top of the room that has the Soul of Bat, completely skipping the encounter with Lesser Demon. It should be happening right here. Perfect. It's a very crazy glitch. Otherwise, we would have no way to gain access to this room. Lesser Demon can be skipped. The fight with Lesser Demon can be skipped if you grab additional wolf relics. You can do a wolf clip to get around him. But you would also need access to the form of Mist. And the only other way to get access to the form of Mist is to do a glitch to skip Minotaur and Werewolf, which is another boss skip. So all things considered, it gets very complicated very quickly. And this turns into the fastest and best route for this run. But now that we have access to the Soul of Bat, the run's not over. At any point, we could make a mistake and kill an enemy using the Wing Smash ability, because one of the reasons we want the Soul of Bat is because it's very fast-moving Wing Smash, which is a charging tackle. You're fully invincible while you're doing it. It costs 8 MP to use it, and the input is kind of technical, so it's possible that you can mess up the spell input. It's essentially a 3/4 circle motion on the control stick while holding the jump button, and then you release the jump button. There, I just did a trick known as Richter Skip. It's a very specific type of jump where I am essentially jumping past the hitbox detector to tell if you've entered the room. Because if you touch that like trigger, the game will be like, you have entered the room. Let's check to see if you've saved Richter, yes or no. If you have saved Richter using the Holy Glasses, the game will just let you through. It won't load the fight with Richter. But if you haven't saved Richter with Holy Glasses, and we don't have the Holy Glasses, it'll force you into a boss fight with Richter, forcing you to either save him or kill him, or leave using a library card. In this run, we obviously don't want to do that because we can't kill him, because that'll give us the bad ending, and it's also a kill. The Holy Glasses is really slow to get. It requires like either killing extra bosses or doing some out-of-bounds shenanigans to get them, and it's really slow, not worth doing. So instead, we do the Richter skip, skipping all those shenanigans. I do have to be very careful to make sure that if I'm wing smashing through an enemy, it's an enemy that I know I cannot kill with that wing smash. Otherwise, it's run over. And I also need to worry about this next upcoming section, which is why I saved the game. Because I am one hit away from dying to Medusa's sword if I poison myself, and I need to poison myself to set up for yet another big toss. This is the half-blood tech glitch. Essentially, the idea is I'm trying to get stuck in a corner and then get hit into the big toss animation. There, I got so lucky. I almost died. I got very lucky that I got healed on the exact frame that I did. Otherwise, I would have died. But the idea is I got big tossed by Medusa's butt. It clipped me through the floor. Because if you're in bat form and get hit and cause the big toss animation, it starts clipping you into the floor. And you also have to line up your iframes, your invincibility frames, using potions to make sure that you don't get hit again. I got hit a second time, but it was after the heal already went through, so I ended up being fine, which is crazy. That is insanely rare. It wouldn't have been the end of the run, but it would have been a big time loss because I would have had to reset back to where I saved before. The only reason I saved there is because I've died doing that boss skip before. So again, here, I'm only wing smashing through enemies and areas that I know that I cannot kill. Those enemies in general. This one's a little tricky. This room, you have to be careful because those guys, those skeletons, they can jump at you and they can essentially like sacrifice themselves to ruin your run. I have had runs that have gotten this far, and just to have the skeleton dancers, I think is what they're called, like jump at me and basically kill the run. This is a setup to force them to jump over me so I don't have to worry about them jumping while I'm wing smashing. It's a little bit slower, but it's very consistent. I don't have to worry about ruining the run at the very end of the game because we are here at the end of the game. Pretty much the whole conceit of the run, like I said earlier, is you want to get the Soul of Bat. The only way to get the Soul of Bat is to do all of these crazy glitches and shenanigans, to get 2 heart refreshes, to do the screen grab glitch, and that gets you to the very end of the game once you get the Soul of Bat. Because the Soul of Bat is broken. And obviously Richter Skip is broken too. Fun fact, you can do a different version of Richter Skip that only requires the Soul of Bat. The Wolf Jump is nice, it's fast, but the Bat is so powerful, Bat alone is enough to beat the game, essentially. Like, you could just get to the end of the game immediately. Here, I'm setting up yet another reverse shift line. This reverse shift line is going to skip me past a save room and warp me into the ceiling out of bounds. whilst in the ceiling out of bounds, you have to deal with like the game trying to push you in a weird way, and your momentum's weird, which is one of the reasons why I'm moving so slow while out of bounds. But if I wing smash in the right position, it'll like eject me through the out of bounds ceiling into the next room over, which is a save room. Oh, flashing lights, yeah. That'll happen sometimes if you're in the wrong position. That's unfortunate. But it skips us past the game check that checks to see if you've killed all of the prerequisite bosses and have collected the prerequisite relics to get to this point of the run. That's known as relic skip. It skips all the end game boss relics and stuff like that. And here we're doing yet another edge grab glitch. Similar to how we skipped past Lesser Demon, we're doing this one to skip past Shaft. Because if we went to the top of this area, we would have to fight the boss Shaft. And that boss does give you experience. And that boss does count as a kill. Sorry, no. The boss doesn't give you experience. I lied. The boss gives you 0 experience, but it does count as a kill in-game. I got it mixed up. So here we have to do, I believe, 17 or 18. I think 17 is the minimum. 18 is if you want to stay safe. Heart refreshes. Whilst sliding across the floor. So that way we can get out of bounds. And once we're out of bounds, luckily enough for us, the load trigger for activating the boss fight with death is just available off screen. Sorry, not death, sorry. The load trigger to activate the boss fight with Dracula is just available off screen. It just exists out of bounds. So if we can get out of bounds and then touch that load trigger, it'll warp us directly to the final fight, skipping the need to fight Shaft, and that way our past 5th run is still legitimate. And I believe this is probably the last one. Yep. Again, we just lose collision and clip into the floor. We fly out of bounds, touch the load trigger from out of bounds. And it warps us directly to the boss fight with Dracula. And here, we beat the game. This kill is indeed allowed. I think Dracula does technically increase your kill count. But if you were to, as far as the rules for the run goes, right there, you can confirm by pausing the game on that screen that there was 0 kills and 0 experience earned up to this point. But to my knowledge, there's no way to get the end credits without killing Dracula. So it is what it is. And also, I don't think you can revenge tech Dracula. I think it's impossible. But there it is. That is the current world record for the pacifist speedrun. I think it's a great speedrun. It shows off a lot of silly glitches. It shows off the problem solving that goes into routing around the idea of like, well, is it possible to beat the game without getting any kills? You know? So it being a 0 kill run, a 0 experience run, does make it quite interesting. And we got to see the how that is. So thank you for watching. Bye-bye.